The Hopi have preserved stories about their ancestors emerging from a world beneath the earth, and one of the places connected with their sacred history is the Grand Canyon. Then, in 1909, an Arizona newspaper published an explosive story claiming that explorers had discovered a hidden cave filled with strange artifacts inside the canyon. The Smithsonian denied any knowledge of the expedition. No verified artifacts ever appeared, and the supposed entrance was never publicly identified. More than a century later, the combination of Hopi traditions, thousands of inaccessible caves, and that bizarre newspaper report has created one of America's strangest archaeological mysteries. The Hopi emergence tradition is often simplified online into claims about a literal civilization still living underground. But the real stories are more complex. Hopi traditions describe previous worlds and an emergence into the present world through a place known as the Sipapuni, sometimes associated with the Grand Canyon region. In these traditions, the underground world is part of a sacred origin story, not evidence of a hidden modern species or lost technological civilization. But the connection to the canyon became much more mysterious after the strange events of 1909. On April 5th of that year, the Arizona Gazette published a story claiming that an explorer named G.E. Kincaid had discovered a hidden entrance while traveling through the Grand Canyon. According to the article, the passage led into an enormous underground complex containing chambers, tunnels, statues, weapons, copper objects, and what the newspaper described as Egyptian or Asian-looking artifacts. The report even claimed the discovery was being investigated under the direction of the Smithsonian Institution. If that story were true, it would completely rewrite the history of North America. There is just one major problem. No reliable evidence has ever been produced that the expedition actually happened. The Smithsonian has said it has no records confirming Kincaid's supposed discovery, and archaeologists have never verified the cave, the artifacts, or the underground complex described by the newspaper. Today, most historians treat the story as an elaborate newspaper hoax, or an example of the sensational reporting common in the early 20th century. But the physical landscape of the Grand Canyon makes the legend unusually difficult to kill. The canyon contains thousands of caves, alcoves, and underground passages, and only a fraction have been thoroughly documented. Its exposed rock layers reach back nearly 2 billion years, and water has spent immense periods of time carving openings into limestone formations. Some cave systems are extremely difficult to reach, while access to many archaeological locations is restricted to protect fragile sites and culturally significant places. Real archaeological discoveries inside the Grand Canyon are also impressive enough without adding a lost civilization. Humans have lived in and around the region for thousands of years, leaving behind dwellings, storage structures, pottery, tools, and rock art. The canyon remains deeply significant to multiple indigenous peoples, including the Hopi, Havasupai, Hualapai, and several other tribes whose histories are connected to the landscape. Then there are the names on the map, which have added even more fuel to internet theories. Parts of the Grand Canyon contain features called Isis Temple, Osiris Temple, Horus Temple, and the Tower of Ra. These names sound suspiciously Egyptian, especially when placed next to the 1909 story about supposedly Egyptian artifacts. But there is a much simpler explanation. Many Grand Canyon formations were named by 19th century explorers and geologists who borrowed names from mythology and religions around the world. The Egyptian names are real, but they are not evidence that ancient Egyptians reached Arizona. Still, the underground part of the mystery is real. The Grand Canyon is not simply a giant open valley. Beneath and inside its walls are extensive cave systems, hidden chambers, and geological formations that remain difficult to explore. One of the best-known examples is the Grand Canyon Caverns system outside the national park, where passages extend deep underground. Across the wider region, researchers continue mapping previously unknown caves using modern surveying equipment. And this brings the story back to the Hopi traditions. The claim that the Hopi specifically described mysterious non-human creatures secretly living beneath the Grand Canyon is largely a modern exaggeration. What their traditions actually preserve is something more interesting: an ancient cultural memory centered on emergence from a previous world below, and a sacred connection to this landscape. The 1909 underground city story has never been proven. No Egyptian chamber has been officially discovered beneath the Grand Canyon, and there is no verified evidence of a hidden civilization living there. But the canyon really does contain enormous areas that most humans will never enter. Archaeological sites protected from public access, and cave systems that remain incompletely mapped. So the biggest mystery may not be whether something is still living beneath the Grand Canyon. It is how much of the canyon's human history is still hidden inside it. Because somewhere among thousands of caves and hundreds of kilometers of almost inaccessible terrain, there are almost certainly archaeological sites that nobody in modern times has found yet.
The unanswered mysteries surrounding ancient civilizations have been a source of inspiration for many conspiracy theorists. In fact, some of these mysteries are so interesting that many of us either already believe them or would like to. One thing is for sure though, none of those thousands of conspiracy theories have ever been, classified. Or have they? We're all aware that the CIA has done some questionable things throughout history for the sake of national security, but you wouldn't expect a book to be both a national and international threat. The CIA recently declassified parts of a book that talks about lost ancient civilizations and the catastrophic events that made them vanish thousands of years ago. This mysterious book was written in 1963 by a guy named Chan Thomas, and it was going to be published by Emerson House in 1965 until the CIA got involved. For some mysterious reason, they classified the book, and it was never released to the public until recently. But here's where it gets interesting. The book was declassified in 2013 due to the Freedom of Information Act, but it wasn't released to the public until 2016. And what was released truly raises a few questions. The original version of this document was 284 pages long, but the PDF essay that was released was heavily censored, with just 57 pages, which makes it 1/5 of the whole document. The pages were edited before they were released to the public in such a way that you wouldn't even notice that the other pages were missing. Now, no one really knows why this book was classified in the first place, but it has some interesting content from what I've gathered. The author of the book had quite the imagination and a huge love for ancient civilizations. And even though what he had to say is very thought-provoking, some of it is just bizarre. He believes that our planet is locked into a never-ending cycle of pole shifts and Earth crust displacements that are responsible for the mass extinctions of many civilizations which existed more than 6,000 years ago, even before the Sumerians. He believed that these events caused more damage to the Earth than meteors, and he bases this theory on a few artifacts that exist around the world, but weren't really noticed until recently. But I'll get into that in a bit. Those mass extinctions that the book talks about include the end of the Ice Age, when huge 2-mile-thick ice sheets disappeared from northern Europe, Northern America, and Canada, and caused 100 species to go extinct. And here's how the author illustrates his hypothesis. He believes that there was a geomagnetic pole shift which caused catastrophic changes to both the atmosphere and the Earth's crust, resulting in the extinction of many civilizations over time. Now, even though the geomagnetic pole shift is a real thing, it doesn't just happen overnight. It happens really slowly. only about every few 100,000 years, according to scientists. But it's a bit more complicated than it sounds. It is a well-known fact that the North Pole is somewhere above Alaska and the South Pole is close to the middle of Antarctica. Now, these are the geographic poles, and they'll always be north and south. However, the Earth's magnetic poles flipped a few 100,000 years ago. So if you had a compass, let's say 700,000 years ago, it would instead point south and show you the Antarctic. But the author of the book has a different theory. He believed that the flip of the north and south magnetic poles doesn't happen every few 100,000 years, but every 12,000 years, and that this flip occurs in just a few hours, causing a catastrophic apocalypse. He thinks this happens as a result of an explosion inside the Earth's core. This explosion causes the magnetic poles to flip, but it also causes the Earth's crust to move. According to the book, due to these catastrophic events, a lot of the Earth's continents that were submerged underwater rose above sea level in just a few hours. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The author also states that the Peruvian Andes were beneath the ocean before the last pole shift. And even though it seems far-fetched, since the Andes are approximately 22,000 feet above sea level, there was evidence to support that claim in the late 80s. Scientists found whale bones and fossils that are said to be millions of years old on top of the Andes and the Himalayan mountains. It's also suggested in the book that the deep freeze the Earth went through during the Younger Dryas event caused the Gulf Stream to be disrupted, and he points to some interesting evidence to support that theory. Frozen mammoths were found trapped in blocks of ice with food still in their mouths. Now, this is a true mystery, because freezing cold weather is in their nature, and they were among the few animals that could truly survive in the Ice Age. So, what could have caused them to freeze so quickly? Kinda makes you go, doesn't it? The document describes the Great Pyramid of Giza as a true enigma as well. The Pyramid of Giza is made out of 2.5 million stone blocks that are placed on top of each other with great precision. It's close to 750 feet wide and more than 450 feet high. To this day, we're still not able to explain how it was constructed, and it's quite difficult to understand the internal design as well. On the inside, the pyramid has no similarities to the other pyramids, and, despite popular belief, there were no mummies found in any of them. If you think that's a bit weird, wait for the next one. There are absolutely no hieroglyphs found in any of the pyramids, and that goes both ways. What do I mean? There are also no pyramids, or anything that resembles a pyramid, in any hieroglyphs either. Mr. Thomas believes that the pyramids were created hundreds of thousands of years before the Egyptians by a civilization that went extinct. Speaking of civilizations, in his book he even mentions the Greeks. He claims that in Greece, there was another ancient race of people that went extinct as well. He claims they were extremely tall with blue eyes and blonde hair, and had access to advanced technology that the Greeks couldn't have known about in their prime. Now, before we drift too far away from the stone blocks, let's talk about another mystery, the temple in Baalbek, Lebanon, and its ginormous foundation blocks. Those stones, which make up the Heliopolis, were also used for the temple in Rome. The foundations of the temples are made of 900-ton trilithon stones, and according to the author, this is proof that there must have been a lost ancient civilization with advanced technology. Now, most archaeologists claim that those stones were made by the Romans. However, there's no evidence to support that. The Romans didn't have the technological equipment to make the stones or lift them. So, you might think, what if they just made them in that place right then and there? Well, those stones were also lifted 30 feet high and were placed next to each other with mathematical precision. And let's not forget about the blocks on top of the Heliopolis in Lebanon, which weigh about 800 tons each. But wait till you hear the next one. The Romans don't even credit themselves for these stones. They claim that they built up the sides, but they don't take credit for the extraordinarily large and heavy foundation stones. The author also makes an interesting point about the distance between the Roman capital and Baalbek in Lebanon. Why would the Romans build the world's largest monolithic stones in such a remote area? and so far away from their capital, and never take credit for it? Well, folks, it's a mystery to me. Now, let's move on to the most intriguing enigma, Easter Island, which is located in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, or nowhere, if you will. The author questions how people found it or even settled in such a remote island that long ago. One of the signifiers of Easter Island are the Moai statues, and the mystery surrounding who they depict and why. What's an even bigger question is how they were created, moved, and positioned in the places they were found. According to this declassified document, Easter Island was part of the now lost continent named Mu, and it was sunk in the Pacific Ocean in a disastrous cataclysm that happened during one of those pole shifts. The continent of Mu, according to the book, was as big as South America, and what we now call Easter Island is just what's left of that continent. The author also believes that this is what happened with the lost city of Atlantis as well. Plato is even quoted about this, saying that the whole city of Atlantis sunk miles beneath the waves within just a day. Even though the whole story sounds very intriguing and makes some interesting points, we know that, scientifically speaking, a cataclysmic pole shift causing entire civilizations to go extinct isn't possible. Now, how about some surreal hidden places to check out? Grab a flashlight and your backpack, and bon voyage! The trip starts in the mountainous country of Switzerland. You travel to the town of Waltensburg in the eastern part of the country. It's raining and it's very cold, but you still make your way to the bottom part of a mountain, where your first adventure awaits. After climbing up high in the mountains, you see a strangely shaped castle. To get there, you must walk up an extremely narrow pathway. Don't look down, you think to yourself. You tighten the straps of your backpack and manage to walk along the pass. Standing at the door of the castle, you really can't believe what you see. A 13th century fortress built entirely of stone. Today, all that is left of Krafenstein Castle is mainly its ruins, but their condition is good enough to get an idea of what the place looked like back in its glory days. You take your time to explore the castle inside, but honestly, this place gives you the chills and you're ready to move on. The next place on the list is Turkey. A plane and then a car ride later, you arrive in the city of Çorum in the northern part of the country. On the outskirts of Çorum, you find a valley filled with old, overgrown mountains and see the beginning of the trail you're about to hike. The way is extremely steep, but it leads to a secret door carved in the mountain. Congratulations! You've just arrived at Kapilikaya. The huge door is a massive arched stone that blocks the entrance to a hidden building. Experts think it has existed since the 2nd century BCE. Unfortunately, the huge door won't open, so what's hidden inside is a mystery today. It's guessed that there is a room inside. Some locals say there's a treasure hidden there too, but until today, no one has managed to enter the place to check. Okay, it's time to get moving before night falls. Next, you get the unique opportunity to travel to Ethiopia. Wandering around the city of Lalibela, you stumble upon a huge pit carved in the ground. You approach it carefully, and soon enough, you see a magnificent terracotta building, so richly detailed it leaves you mesmerized. But that's not all. There are 10 other pits just like this one, hiding King Lalibela's 12th century buildings. All 11 constructions are different from one another, yet share a similar recognizable style. They were hand-carved over the span of 24 years, only with the help of chisels, which is unbelievable given that these buildings are up to 50 feet high. That's about as tall as 5 African elephants stacked on top of each other, if you could do that. This unconventional way of construction made them entirely monolithic, meaning they were carved out of just one gigantic piece of rock. Pretty impressive, huh? Once you leave Ethiopia, you grab a flight to southern Italy, right there on the tip of the boot. No hiking is needed here. Whew! Your friend takes you to a site called Sassi di Matera. It's a Paleolithic city carved in the slope of a steep hill. You might feel like you've traveled in time here, as local stone houses and ancient buildings are unlike anything you've ever seen before. The site, also known as De Sassi, is suspected to be one of the first human settlements in Italy, dating back to over 9,000 years ago. Wandering around the town, you might get invited inside one of the cave-like houses. Oh, and as weird as it may sound, some of the streets run on top of people's homes. Talk about Paleolithic urban planning. You're probably becoming an expert on rock-cut architecture by now, but there are still a few sites left on your list. Next off, you head to Slovenia to visit the world's largest cave castle. This medieval castle was built on top of a 400-foot-high cliff and was designed to be impenetrable. Luckily for you, security is much more relaxed today. Still, if you're looking for a more challenging and less touristy way inside, you can get into the castle through one of its many underground tunnels. They were built over 800 years ago for the owner of the castle. He needed secret passageways to sneak supplies. Today, Pajama Castle is both enchanting and mysterious. I'd say it depends on whether it's a warm sunny day or a cold stormy night. After this medieval experience, you head on to visit Petra, a magnificent Jordanian monument found in the middle of the desert. To get around here, you'll need a large supply of water and sunscreen because it's going to get hot. But this site is worth it. The city of Petra is a marvel of the ancient world. Back in the 4th century BCE, this region was a trading hub at the crossroads of commercial routes. Petra was a wealthy city, home to the Nabateans, an Arab Bedouin tribe that thrived in the region for many years. The rock-carved gate-like structure Petra is famous for is called the Pharaoh's Treasure. It stands at the main entrance to the site and is said to have a treasure hidden inside. You might feel tempted to check it out for yourself, but that's an adventure for another trip. For now, you hop on another plane ride, this time to the Americas. First, you visit the USA, more specifically, the mountainous state of Colorado. You make your way to Mesa Verde National Park. There, in between the greenery and abundant vegetation, you'll find over 600 dwellings built in the cave beneath the cliff, carved deep into the mountainside. This ancient village is now considered a heritage site. The local Puebloan tribe built it back in the 1190s. One of its main buildings is called the Cliff Palace. It's a multi-story construction built from sandstone and mud mortar. The palace alone housed over 150 rooms. If you're feeling sporty, you might want to visit the Balcony House. To get there, you'll have to climb a 32-foot ladder. You'll get to see a mid-sized village of 38 rooms, including 2 kivas. Those are traditional chambers that were built by the Puebloans for ceremonial purposes. Still in the U.S., you make your way to the hills of South Dakota. You're there to visit one of the world's most impressive human-made sculptures on Mount Rushmore. What's so mysterious about this place, you might ask? Well, during Mount Rushmore's construction, a 70-foot-long secret tunnel was built behind the head of Abraham Lincoln. The tunnel was supposed to hold all the documents and artifacts important to the United States history. After the designers thought it through, they decided it was better to hide them in a safe box in the floor of the tunnel. The box holds the history of how Mount Rushmore came to be carved, as well as a brief history of the U.S. and the 4 presidents depicted on the mountain. Amazing, right? Now, you're headed down to Machu Picchu, a South American site hidden between the Peruvian mountains. Machu Picchu itself is already a mystery. Researchers still don't know why or even how the ancient Incan civilization managed to engineer the stone-built citadel all the way back in 1450 CE. To get there, you must endure a 3-day hike, reaching the impressive altitude of 8,000 feet above sea level. Or you can get a train, but that's no fun, right? You're here to check on a relatively new discovery. Back in 2010, French engineer David Crespi was taking measurements of the Inca ruins when he noticed a door he had never seen before. It was sealed off by stones. He went back to the site a few months later with an electromagnetic scanner. The scanner, which could detect objects behind walls, showed there were copious quantities of metals behind that sealed door. The researcher contacted the Peruvian authorities requesting to remove the rocks, but they didn't authorize it. As of today, the door is still locked. Whew, this trip was long, wasn't it? Make sure to get some rest, Indiana Jones. Humans invest a lot of time and money exploring the unknown. First, outer space, then the ocean floor. But there's another frontier we're trying to conquer. Scientists call it the deep frontier. I'm talking about how far down to the Earth's core we've made it so far. During the 60s, humans tried digging the deepest man-made hole on Earth. This took us deep into the Arctic Circle. What later became known as the super deep borehole is also the deepest artificial point on Earth, reaching the depth of 40,230 feet. It took 20 years to drill this far into the Earth's crust, and researchers say this is only about 1/3 of the way through to the mantle. Here's a quick anatomy of our planet. If the Earth is like an onion, the crust is like the thick skin of this onion. This part is only 25 miles thick. Beyond this is the 1,800-mile deep mantle, and after that, right at the center of the Earth, is the core, which is made up of 2 layers, inner and outer. Now, can you guess where on the planet the crust is at its thinnest? On the ocean floor. When American scientists understood that, they started drilling holes on the seabed. This gave way to Project Mohole. It began in 1961, but their technology to drill deep holes on the ocean was really bad. They had to improvise. They installed a system of propellers along the sides of their drill ship to keep it steady over the hole. The main challenge was to drill as vertically as possible. Otherwise, that deep hole would look more like a deep maze. Both the Kola Super Deep Borehole project and the Project Mohole came to an official stop in the years that followed. But hey, humans have built some pretty deep stuff underground. In 1963, a Turkish man took a swing with his sledgehammer to improve his basement and discovered a tunnel. That tunnel entrance led to more openings that connected a multitude of halls and chambers. He didn't know it, but he had discovered Deringoyu. This once lost city was up to 18 stories tall and 200 feet deep. The city was large enough to host 20,000 people, and it was simply standing beneath Cappadocia in Turkey the whole time. Cappadocia hosts hundreds of subterranean dwellings. 40 of these underground cities are at least 2 stories high, but none of them are as huge as Deringoyu. There's not a lot of historical accounts of how Deringoyu was born. Some speculate that the oldest part of the complex was dug about 2000 BCE by the Hittites. The Hittites were an Indo-European civilization who formed one of the first major civilizations of the Bronze Age in West Asia. Scholars think they built this underground city to protect themselves from invasion. Others think it was actually the Christians who built the city in the 1st century CE. They speculate that it could have been constructed to protect people from the intense temperature variations, extreme heat in summer and freezing cold in winter. Geographically, the terrain under Cappadocia is great for building. The rocks are soft, which makes tunneling easier. For that same reason, opening large caves underground is fragile. That's why most chambers have pillars that support them. On the bright side, and we are, none of the floors at Deringoyu have ever collapsed. The builders of Deringoyu thought of everything. The city was shut off from the world by huge rocks that hid its entrance. It was ventilated by a total of more than 15,000 shafts, around 10 centimeters wide. This way, they guaranteed enough breathing air in the upper levels in a way that they ended up being used as the living and sleeping quarters. The lower levels of this impressive maze were mainly used for storage. But honestly, they had it all. A room for a wine press, for domestic animals, small religious buildings. They certainly didn't spare any efforts to make that underground city as complete as an above-ground one. Now, speaking of impressive underground stuff, Switzerland has the longest tunnel in the world, built here on the Swiss Alps. This absurdly huge tunnel was built over 8,000 feet below the surface. Check this out. This is what the Gotthard-based tunnel looks like. The first idea to build the tunnel was put forward as early as 1947, but construction only officially began in 1999. It took them years to approve the project and then scout for the perfect location. Even so, the 73 different rock types that compose Massif turned the construction into a real challenge. Some of the rocks were as hard as granite, and others were as soft as sandstone. This meant they needed different approaches and equipment so the whole thing wouldn't crumble down. Overall, they had to excavate about 28 million metric tons of rock to make way for the tunnel. There were many other challenges to build that far into the earth. The deeper into the mountain they got, the hotter the temperatures were. Since there's no natural ventilation, temperatures would get as high as 115 degrees Fahrenheit, making it really hard for workers to endure. The tunnel stretches for 35 miles from one end to the other. During the construction, workers had to use 4 massive tunnel boring machines, aka moles, to penetrate through the massive. Each of these moles was around 1,400 feet long. But that was one of the best things they could do, since these machines limit the disturbance to the surrounding ground and help to produce a smooth tunnel wall. You'd never guess that the world's deepest basement belongs to the Sydney Opera House in Australia. The building goes as deep underground as it grows above ground. But this basement isn't just the Opera House's foundation, it's a parking lot. This unique parking garage penetrates 120 feet underground, or 12 stories deep, while most car parks are only 4 or 5 stories deep. But that's not all that makes it unique. You see, if they decided to build a normal rectangular parking space, this would end up eliminating a bunch of possible parking spaces. And since they wanted to maximize the space they had available, they had to come up with some superb structure. First, they opened up a man-made cavern to make that dream possible. Then they had to come up with a design. That's what led to the donut-shaped cavern, or what engineers call a double helix. This design shocked the engineering community for its innovative approach. But hey, it worked! Today, there is space for over 1,000 cars down there, which seems about right for an opera house. Let's wow once again real quick. Some underground structures may take up to an hour to reach. Take this gold mine in South Africa that lies around 2.5 miles below the surface. Yeah, you may think, hey, it's just a couple of miles, why does it take an hour to get there? But the conditions are hard and it's not for the weak. But Milan Ladina, an Ecuadorian runner, even completed a half marathon there, despite temperatures reaching 104 degrees Fahrenheit, high humidity at 80%, and an atmospheric pressure of 1.4, comparable to what divers experience 5 meters under the sea. Yikes! Stone Age people were grunting cavemen with spears. True or false? Absolutely false. They were gathering around and forming real culture as far as we've discovered. In Turkey, scientists uncovered a 12,000-year-old mystery that's revising history. It's a sophisticated cosmic calendar made out of giant stone temples that may actually be a warning from the stars. We're talking about Göbekli Tepe. This prehistorical site predates even Stonehenge, our classical stone ring circle, by 6,000 years. And it upends why we think Stone Age civilizations emerged and thrived. Here's how this discovery could change our collective history. Around 10,850 BCE, a massive comet, or better yet, a bunch of comet fragments, smashed into Earth. The skies darkened, the temperature dropped, big animals vanished, and it kicked off a mini ice age that lasted over 1,200 years. What's now a place called Göbekli Tepe was home to a group of humans who survived this entire chaotic event. After it happened, they started paying close attention to the sky. As a way of trying to control time a little bit more, they tracked the movements of the sun, the moon, the planets, and comets. This in turn led them to build a huge lunisolar calendar, the first one in the world. Now, if you were to tour around this classic Stone Age monument, you'd see that not all the stone pillars are blank. Some of them have carvings, like this main one with a bunch of V's on it. Turns out there are 365 V's, which scientists believe represent the days of the solar year. One of them, a V hanging on a bird's neck, is thought to mark a solar eclipse. Other pillars have dangerous animals carved on them, like foxes, lions, scorpions, vultures, twisting and crawling up the sides. Unlike typical Stone Age carvings, these weren't of edible animals like deer or sheep. One of the theories is that these drawings were symbolic. Some archaeologists believe they reflect the fears and chaos this civilization had lived through, a kind of collective attempt to make sense of a terrifying and unpredictable world. Archaeologist Danielle Stordour has highlighted the images of vultures, saying they represent the people who passed away. In some ancient cultures, vultures were believed to carry the souls of the deceased into another realm. She's seen similar symbols in ancient sites nearby. To understand why this all makes sense, we need to dig deeper into the real purpose of this site. Göbekli Tepe was discovered in 1994 by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who realized that the hill in southeastern Turkey wasn't just another Neolithic mound. Underneath it, his team uncovered massive stone circles supported by pillars weighing up to 20 tons. Radiocarbon dating puts the site at around 12,000 years old, making it the oldest known ceremonial structure ever built. I mean, it predates the Egyptian pyramids by over 7,000 years. This discovery shocked the archaeological world. At the end of the Ice Age, humans were supposed to be nomadic, surviving off wild plants and animals, not building sacred complexes with symbolic art, and giving birth to what we now classify as civilization. We usually think civilization starts with farming, then villages, then crops. But this site suggests something more surprising. Early humans may have come together not to grow food, but to worship. Schmidt found no signs of homes, hearths, or permanent settlement, just stuff used for rituals and gatherings. This has led researchers to believe that spirituality and communal rituals came first and that farming followed. Because to build something this massive, you'd need hundreds of people working together, which in turn would have sparked the need for food, organization, and social structure. In other words, the temple came first, then the village, then the farm. Now, Göbekli Tepe isn't just stirring debate because it's old. It's because it seems too advanced for its time, and that's where the more controversial theories start to emerge. Some researchers believe the builders of Göbekli Tepe weren't simply primitive hunter-gatherers experimenting with stone tools. They may have been the inheritors of ancient knowledge, remnants of a much older civilization that existed before the end of the last ice age. This idea ties into the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, a theory that a comet struck Earth around 10,850 years ago, triggering a sudden and catastrophic climate shift. According to this view, the survivors of that event passed down their knowledge through symbolism, architecture, and oral tradition. And Göbekli Tepe could be one of the earliest attempts to preserve that memory. Now, if that's true, then the carvings at this site, especially the animal symbols on the pillars, aren't just decorative. They could be astronomical codes, tracking constellations and celestial events. But one pillar might hold the biggest secret of all. It's called the Vulture Stone, and it's freaking archaeologists out. On it, you'll find a strange combination of figures: a headless man, birds, and a scorpion. To the untrained eye, it might seem random, but some researchers believe these are ancient representations of constellations, like Scorpius among them, and that the headless man symbolizes a mass extinction event. Some even argue that this is the oldest known record of a comet impact, the one that triggered the Younger Dryas. And if you're wondering who this older lost civilization might have been, they are called Atlantis, or more neutrally, Civilization X. Theorists like Graham Hancock suggest that this advanced culture, destroyed in the chaos of the comet impact, passed fragments of its knowledge to survivors around the globe. In that case, Göbekli Tepe wasn't the start of civilization, it was the restart. Now, back to the stones. Pillar 43 may look like a celestial calendar at first, but when archaeologists recreated the sky patterns encoded in its carvings, they found a precise snapshot of the sky dating back over 13,000 years. It appears to show a meteor shower, a flood, and humanity's tragic end, aka the Headless Man. A snake rising from the ground might even symbolize tidal waves or destruction coming from below. But the story doesn't end there. Pillar seems to expand on the same disaster, the one they called the Terror of the Sky. You might see animals fleeing, waves, fire raining down. It paints a vivid picture of the meteor shower. But wait! While Pillars 43 and 56 may encode memories of a past catastrophe, Pillar 18 might be a forecast. That stone zooms in on the Aquarius constellation. If this sounds familiar, maybe it's from the phase Age of Aquarius, which is the age we're living in now. Some enthusiasts believe this may be a warning for us, and may be telling us that a similar meteor shower will hit Earth and thus you and me and us. I mean, chills! But hey, that's the kind of mystery that makes Göbekli Tepe so captivating. Today, archaeologists know that Göbekli Tepe was part of a much larger sacred complex, now known as Taş Tepeler. A network of ancient sites across the region, each with its own secrets and structures, but connected by shared patterns and motifs. In 2019, excavations began at this sister site, just 40 miles from Göbekli Tepe, known as Karahan Tepe. And here's the twist. Some researchers believe Karahan Tepe might be even older. Unlike Göbekli Tepe, which appears to have been primarily ceremonial, Karahan Tepe has signs of domestic structures like walls, tools, and perhaps even homes. And that changes everything. Because whether these sites were the work of highly sophisticated hunter-gatherers or survivors carrying the fragments of a lost pre-Ice Age civilization, one thing becomes clear. Our ancestors weren't just surviving. They were planning, tracking, and predicting. They were far more capable, curious, and connected to the universe than we ever gave them credit for. Eridu, a megacity older than the first known civilization and older than the pyramids of Giza, was buried in the sands of the Mesopotamian desert for over 2,000 years. Now, scientists have made a discovery that changes what we know about the ancient city. They found over 4,000 canals around Eridu that brought water to more than 700 farms where people worked between the 6th and the early 1st millennium BCE. Now, Eridu was founded around 5400 BCE and was the city of the first kings and history's first city according to the Sumerian king list, an ancient text on a clay tablet. Ancient Sumerians believed that deities created this city when they decided to settle on Earth. Eridu plays such a big role in Sumerian myths and legends that, at some point, people used to think it was just a mythical location. The most famous Eridu myth says that the skies got angry because humans were too noisy, so they decided to send a great flood to wipe them out. A new study showed that the Euphrates River served as the source of water for the entire city. The researchers mapped what remains of the ancient landscape and found a well-developed network of artificial irrigation canals. They discovered 200 large main canals pulling water from the Euphrates, and those canals fed another 4,000 smaller canals. The team used everything from satellite images and drone footage to soil analysis, old records, and remote sizing tech to map out the area. The 700 farms that used the water from the system were different in size, from about 5,000 square feet to over 200,000 square feet. The main canals were a little over a half-mile long, and some stretched more than 5 miles. The smaller canals could be as short as 32 feet. Rivers in Mesopotamia were the main water sources for farming, so ancient farmers had to learn how to guide water from the river to their fields. It all started with simple methods, like digging small canals, but over generations, they learned how to build massive canals up to 62 miles long. The Euphrates itself helped the farmers. Water was moving thanks to gravity down its elevated riverbanks, and natural breaks in the banks let it spill onto the land. Researchers aren't sure when each canal was in use, and it's unlikely that all 4,200 canals were active at the same time during that long period. Now, Eridu used to be an important religious and trade center because of its strategic location on the Persian Gulf. Its economy mostly had to do with fishing, thanks to the Euphrates River. Researchers found fishing nets and weights and whole bales of dried fish at the site. And there were even models of reed boats, the earliest physical evidence we have for constructed boats anywhere. The city was thriving until people abandoned it around the year 600 BCE, and scientists still aren't sure why they did it. The local residents, plus the visiting pilgrims and merchants, had just exhausted all the resources of the land. They had to let it rest several times before abandoning the city for good. It happened when the Euphrates changed its course, and they lost their main source of water. Now, many centuries later, in 1854, a British official was on a mission to this area to check out a remote place that had a bunch of mounds called tells, which are piles of debris left behind by ancient human settlements. At first, Taylor wasn't impressed. He had been hoping to find something big, maybe statues, ancient writing, or ruins of palaces and temples. But with the brief time he had, all he found were things like walls, drains, stone platforms, and pieces of limestone columns decorated with tiny mosaic cones. But he didn't know that these boring mounds were hiding one of the oldest cities on Earth, Eridu. The people at the British Museum got interested in the finding, but the first full-scale excavations took place here only around a century later. The local Iraqi authorities got really interested in the excavations as they were hoping to find more about the earliest days of Mesopotamian history. So they focused on Mound 1, a massive tell as tall as an 8-story building. Soon they uncovered part of an unfinished step pyramid from the end of the 3rd millennium BCE. As they dug deeper, they found layers of human life going back in time. There were levels from the Uruk period, and even remains from a time before the Sumerians called Proto-history. In those lower layers, they discovered multiple rebuilds of the Temple of Enki, the city's main deity. People rebuilt this temple again and again for over 2,000 years. Every time the temple collapsed, they built a new one right on top. Each new version of the temple was bigger and more impressive than the last. From the middle of the 4th millennium BCE, these temple buildings became massive, more advanced than anything else humans had built up to that point. The city in Eridu was also becoming more complex, with clear social classes. Eventually, they stopped rebuilding the temple and put up a step pyramid on top of the ruins. Even though Eridu faded, it likely stayed important as a religious site. Archaeologists found pottery from the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE during excavations, although there were no signs of houses. The Sumerians were an innovative civilization, as you can tell. By 1500 BCE, they invented the cedar plow, a tool that let farmers plow and plant seeds at the same time, using animals like oxen to pull it. This gear even came with instructions. The Sumerian Farmer's Almanac gave farmers advice on how to grow more crops with proper tilling and irrigation. These smart farming tricks helped feed more people, which led to larger cities, an organized ruling system, and more focus on religion. And as their cities expanded, so did their work in writing, math, and spiritual life. 5,000 years ago, the Sumerians had already produced cuneiform, one of the first writing systems in history. So another recent find from the same part of the world proves that bureaucracy existed already 4,000 years ago. Archaeologists found ancient administrative tablets in another ancient Sumerian city. These clay tablets are the oldest solid proof we have of the world's first empire, the Akkadian Empire. The tablets were inside a state archive building made of mud bricks, which had different rooms that acted like offices. Now, before this discovery, archaeologists didn't really understand how the first known empire in the world, the Akkadian Empire, worked behind the scenes. But now, thanks to the recent Gerso excavations, we have the first real and unambiguous evidence of the empire's administrative system, They tracked everything: deliveries, spending, and inventory, from fish to sheep to grains, fabric, and even gems. The tablets also include population records, with names and jobs of men, women, and kids, an ancient version of a census. From these records, scientists found out that women played a key role in Akkadian society. Some women had powerful positions, like high priestesses. The tablets also show a wide range of jobs, from skilled workers like stonecutters to people with simpler roles like temple floor sweepers. Some even included building blueprints, field layouts, and canal maps, proving that the empire had serious organization and planning. Eventually, the city rebelled and gained its independence, and the Akkadian Empire's 150-year rule ended. Now, researchers are carefully cleaning and translating the tablets to fully understand what they say. These new finds will replace older, incomplete ideas about the empire and give us a way more accurate picture of how Akkadian power and the ruling system actually worked.
Egypt has ruled as the owner of the world's oldest pyramid, until now. A newly discovered structure in Indonesia may predate Egypt by thousands of years. If this is true, it rewrites history. The world's first pyramid was born during the last ice age, and it's now located in the middle of the jungle. At first glance, Gunung Padang does not exactly scream pyramid. It looks more like a big mound with scattered stones tossed all over it. But recent excavations have revealed that far beneath the surface, there are stone structures buried in multiple layers, deeper and much older than anyone expected. We're talking possibly 27,000 years old. This is serious if we're talking about humankind's history. Today, the oldest known ancient society with this kind of building knowledge is probably 11,000 years old and used to occupy the region of modern-day Turkey. We've talked about Göbekli Tepe in some of our previous videos. Gunung Padang has got the scientific community divided and raising big, life-changing questions. You see, the site of Gunung Padang has long been considered sacred by the locals. Many even call it the Mountain of Enlightenment, and still use the site to perform mystical ceremonies. Westerners had no clue this place existed until the late 1800s. That's when a Dutch explorer heard whispers about a strange mountain and went to see it for himself. Just 4 hours south of Jakarta, he found something wild. Stacked terraces connected by rough stone steps, massive flat stones covering the ground, and towering pillars everywhere. To him, it looked like an ancient ceremonial site, maybe even a burial ground. For almost 100 years, mainstream archaeologists simply ignored Gunung Padang. The story resurfaced when a group of farmers brought attention back to the mountain in 1979. By the 80s, researchers finally started digging and found pottery fragments dating back to somewhere between 45 BCE to 22 CE. But here's where this story gets interesting. Some studies suggest the deepest layers of Gunung Padang are between 16 to 27,000 years old. That means this pyramid could have been built during the last ice age. And if that's true, it's older than Egypt's famous pyramids, the ones we thought were the world's first. This whole theory comes from geologist Danny Hillman. His team used ground-penetrating radar, core drilling, and carbon dating to study Gunung Padang, and what they found was pretty wild. According to Hillman, this place is like a giant ancient layer cake, built in stages over thousands of years. The youngest layer is around 3,000 to 4,000 years old. That's roughly the age of the pyramids in Egypt. When you dig a little deeper, you find Unit 2, which was built between 7,500 and 8,000 years ago. But here's where things get truly mind-blowing. Hillman claims the deepest layer, Unit 3, could be as old as 27,000 years old. His study suggests that Gunung Padang isn't just a hill. It's a stepped pyramid, complete with chambers and hollow spaces hidden underground. Although there's not much info about these chambers. The geologist does admit his theory sounds crazy, but he says it's all real and legitimate data. Hey, this is just one theory. Those who disagree with Hillman say Gunung Padang was not man-made. It was nature-made. Maybe not the upper parts, which Hillman calls Unit 1. The lowest units, which are the units that could change our collective history, are the problem. To understand what the fuss is about, we need to look at the soil. The area that Gunung Padang was built on is filled with volcanoes, which means it sits on top of volcanic soil. Hillman's team drilled into the mound and found something odd. Younger soil wedged between much older rock layers. To them, this was a clear sign that the stones were stacked, not naturally formed. After all, in nature, younger soil doesn't just sink beneath ancient rock. That would be like discovering fresh ink beneath the pages of an ancient manuscript. You know, something doesn't add up unless someone put it there on purpose. However, skeptics such as volcanologist Zoetkenel Braunthal argue that Gunung Padang is not a human-made pyramid, but rather the remains of an ancient volcano. He believes the mixed layers of young soil and old rock are the result of natural erosion and geological processes, not human construction. Volcanic activity can create unusual formations over time, and without clear signs of tools, carvings, or human remains, many experts remain unconvinced. The mystery boils down to this paradox. Are we looking at the ruins of a lost civilization, or are we simply misinterpreting the work of nature? Most archaeologists say that to prove an ancient civilization existed, you first need signs of culture, art, tools, structures, something man-made. That's exactly why archaeologist Dibble, one of Hillman's biggest critics, isn't buying the pyramid theory. He argues that without solid proof of human activity, all we really know is that the soil in the mound is 27,000 years old, and that alone doesn't mean people were building pyramids back then. But here's the thing. The more we dig into ancient history, the more we find that our ancestors were capable of things we never imagined. The idea of advanced civilizations existing during the Ice Age seems far-fetched to many archaeologists. After all, who could have the technology and knowledge to build massive structures like pyramids in such a harsh environment? This is where some researchers, particularly Graham Hancock, come in. Hancock is known for his controversial theories that say that advanced civilizations may have existed during the Ice Age. The last Ice Age lasted from about 2.5 million years ago to roughly 11,700 years ago. During its peak, huge ice sheets covered large parts of North America, Europe, and Asia, making it a challenging time for human survival. Most archaeologists believe that humans during this period were mainly hunter-gatherers, moving from place to place in search of food and shelter. The idea that they had skills to build a massive pyramid-like structure is hard for many to accept. However, researchers like Graham Hancock argue that advanced Ice Age civilizations could have existed and been wiped out by cataclysmic events such as floods caused by melting glaciers. According to Hancock, these ancient cultures may have built monumental structures like pyramids. One of Hancock's most notable books, Fingerprints of the Gods, explores this theory in depth. He looks at evidence from ancient monuments, like Egypt's Great Pyramid of Giza and the megalithic structures in South America, and suggests that these could be the remnants of a forgotten civilization. Hancock's theories imply that knowledge and skills passed down from this ancient culture were eventually rediscovered and used by later civilizations, like the Egyptians and Mayans. If we apply this to Gunung Padang, the idea becomes even more fascinating. Could this ancient site in Indonesia be a remnant of a long-lost civilization that existed during the last Ice Age? We'll have to keep digging to figure this out. Either way, while scientists debate the origins of Gunung Padang, local myths offer a different explanation. One of the most famous local legends tells the story of King Siliwangi, a powerful ruler who wanted to build a grand palace in a single night. With supernatural strength, he began stacking enormous stones to create his masterpiece. But as the first light of dawn appeared, he realized he had failed to finish in time. Frustrated, he abandoned the project, leaving behind the massive rock formations that we see today. While this story isn't historical fact, it reflects how deeply Gunung Padang is embedded in the local culture. Even today, the site is considered a place of spiritual energy, attracting visitors who believe in its mystical power. Hindus from the island of Bali climb the mountain steps to conduct rituals related to the rising of the full moon. Followers of a variant of Indonesian martial art practice their discipline high on the mountain. As these sacred rituals continue, archaeology and geology keep trying to figure out if this really is the oldest man-made structure in the world.
Now picture a tomb locked for 1,400 years, and then, suddenly, poof, it's open. What could be inside? An ancient curse or exciting discoveries? Maybe the former, since a giant stone owl is guarding the entrance with the owl's beak clamping down on a human face like it's swallowing a soul. Now, it's not just a picture this situation. The discovery probably happened like this. The archaeologists were at a place called San Pablo Huizo in southern Mexico. At one point, they stumbled upon something that resembled an entrance. Ooh, where did it lead? They just had to figure it out. By that entrance, there was a large carved owl. Soon the researchers realized that it wasn't just decoration. The beak of the bird was open, and inside, there was the painted face of a man. Most likely, it was an important leader. For the people inhabiting that region, owls were linked to demise and power. So, it was like either the owl was guarding the spirit of the person buried there, or was it holding it captive? Was it even wise to sneak into that mysterious place? Well, the scientists' thirst for answers was more powerful than any fear. So they entered and found themselves inside a tomb. It was made up of two main parts, a front room, kind of like an entrance hall, and a deeper burial room. There was a doorway between these two rooms. It was covered in carvings. At the top, there was a stone beam with special symbols on it. Those symbols worked like names based on a person's birth date. On each side of the doorway, there were carvings of a man and a woman wearing detailed headdresses. The researchers thought they could have been placed there like guards, watching over the tomb. The walls were still painted in bright colors – white, green, red, and blue. It was an astonishing view, and the paintings actually told a story, showing a funeral procession. People were carrying bags of something called copal, which is basically a tree resin. The locals, called Zapotecs, burned it like incense during ceremonies, kind of like how people today often light candles or incense during special rituals. Besides, the archaeologists found carved symbols that work like a calendar. A bit later, the researchers found out that the tomb was about 1,400 years old. It came from the Zapotec civilization, and what made it so special was how well everything inside was still preserved. It was like opening a time capsule that hadn't been touched for over 1,000 years. Interestingly, they didn't just randomly find it. Officials started looking into the site after someone reported looting. When scientists checked it out, they realized they had stumbled onto one of the most important discoveries in Mexico in the last decade. The tomb dates back to around the year 600, when the Zapotec people were thriving in the area. They were sometimes called the Cloud People, and they built a powerful civilization long before the Spanish arrived. Even today, many people in Mexico still speak Zapotec languages. Right now, experts from the National Institute of Anthropology and History are working carefully to protect the tomb and study everything inside. They're looking at things like pottery, symbols, and even a few human bones they found there. One of the most exciting things about this discovery was that many other Zapotec tombs found in the region had already been looted before archaeologists got to them. That means we lost a lot of history. Luckily, this tomb was miraculously mostly intact. Now scientists are focusing on protecting the tomb. They're carefully controlling the air and humidity inside because even small changes can damage it, documenting the artwork, and studying the carvings and symbols. But ancient tombs aren't always hidden deep underground, like in adventure movies. Sometimes you can find them right under a busy city. In 2023, archaeologists made a bizarre discovery on the edge of Chapultepec Park in Mexico City. They found a group of graves that are about 3,500 years old, older than most ancient pyramids in Mexico. There were 10 tombs shaped a bit like upside-down bottles or bells, wide at the bottom and narrower at the top. About half of them had human remains inside, 4 women and 1 man, mostly young adults. These people likely lived in a large village in the area during the early and middle pre-classic periods. That's long before the Aztecs ever existed. One of the archaeologists explained that people had been living in that whole area before a volcano had changed everything. That volcano is the Chile volcano, and when it erupted, it basically buried parts of the landscape under lava. Because of that, the ground where those tombs were stayed sealed and untouched for over 3,000 years. The Chile volcano is what's called an ash cone volcano. Basically, it looks like a classic volcano shape anyone would draw, round at the bottom and rising into a cone. It's about 1,000 feet tall with pretty steep sides, like walking up a hill that tilts about 30 to 40 degrees, which is definitely not an easy climb. Scientists believe Chile erupted sometime between 245 and 315 CE, based on radiocarbon dating. When it blew, it wasn't a small event. It completely changed the landscape. Lava spread out and formed what we now call the Pedregal de San Angel lava fields, covering a huge area south of modern-day Mexico City. Imagine a thick, slow-moving wave of molten rock turning everything in its path into solid stone. One of the biggest victims of this eruption was Cuicuilco, which was once a major and advanced city in Mesoamerica. The lava literally buried it, freezing it in time under layers of rock. After that, the people who lived there had to leave and spread out to other regions. On the bright side, this movement of people, kind of like a forced migration, helped spread their culture across central Mexico. It may even have influenced the development of nearby cities, like Teotihuacan. Sometime later, it became one of the most powerful urban centers in the region. But this story has a twist. Not all scientists agree on the timing. Some think that a series of big eruptions and the destruction of Cuicuilco might have actually started earlier, around the 1st century BCE. So, depending on which history you look at, this disaster either happened a bit later in Roman times or even earlier, back when ancient civilizations in Mexico were still developing. Either way, it was a catastrophic event that reshaped both the land and the lives of the people living there. But let's get back to the tombs. They aren't huge. Most are about 3 to 6.5 feet wide and up to 5 feet tall. Picture something about the size of a small closet or a big storage bin you could crouch inside. Archaeologists call them bell tombs because of that rounded bottle-like shape. This style isn't unique to just one place. We've found similar tombs across different parts of Mexico. It means people must have shared their ideas, like trends spreading between regions today. Another curious thing is that this wasn't a one-time burial site. The team found later burials too, which means people kept coming back to that spot for generations. It was a place that remained important to a community for hundreds of years. Inside the tombs, archaeologists found offerings buried with those who had passed away. There were tools made from deer antlers, a cup, and small female figurines. They were probably personal items or symbolic gifts, similar to how people today might leave flowers or meaningful objects at a grave. All those items have been moved to the National Museum of History for careful study. Experts use them to figure out more about how those people lived. Luckily, this isn't the only discovery in the area. Construction work around Chapultepec Park has been turning up all kinds of history lately. In fact, not long before this, archaeologists even found a 16th century cemetery from less than 100 years after the fall of the Aztec Empire after the Spanish conquest. Scientists found an entire city of Gallangola that was hidden beneath the dense jungles of Mexico for 600 years. It covers 360 hectares, had over 1,000 buildings, 2.5 miles of defensive walls, a network of internal roads, and a well-planned urban layout with temples and ball courts, and separate neighborhoods for the elites and commoners. For centuries, people believed there was just an abandoned fortress there, based on stories passed on from generation to generation. Until recently, there was no way to see how truly huge it was without spending years on the ground. But thanks to the new technology, a remote sensing tool called LiDAR, they got a 3D model of the area in just 2 hours from a plane. Gayangula was built between the years 1350 and 1521. It was a crucially important place for the Zapotec people, a group that had lived in the area since around 700 BCE. In Gayangula, families lived together in homes with big patios in the middle, surrounded by rooms. When families got bigger, they built more rooms and made their homes larger. The study found that both the leaders and regular people worked together to make the city better. Because Gayangula was surrounded by mountains, they used this land wisely and built their houses in a way that fit the slopes and let rainwater flow naturally. This helped keep their homes safe and strong. They were built so well that many of these buildings are still standing, even after hundreds of years. There are 2 pyramids in the center of the city. They may have been used as temples where the priests celebrated rites and ceremonies to their deities. The priests brought offerings to the altars, and the people assembled at the 2 squares that are now sunken. Then, there is also a palace with 64 rooms, some of them with circular columns on several sloped terraces. There are patios with many stairways all connected to each other. The sensing tool also found a round-shaped lookout point on a natural rock, where the Zapotec people could see their foes approaching from a distance. Researchers also noticed 2 circular structures that could have been used to watch the stars and measure time. They also found some tombs, so there was most definitely a city cemetery. By the end of the 1400s, the Zapotec people controlled a large territory on the Pacific coast and had successfully defended their land from the Aztecs, who were trying to take over more territory. They did the almost impossible and survived a 7-month-long siege at Gayangula. When they won this conflict and kept control of the southern part of Mesoamerica, the Zapotecs didn't need to live in Gayangula anymore. Staying in the mountains had its pros, but they needed fresh water and good farmland to grow food. The small city of Tehuantepec, just 12 miles away, had these conditions, so they moved there just before the Spanish arrived in 1521. Over time, Zapotec traditions started to fade, but their culture didn't disappear completely, and more than 300,000 Zapotec people still live in Oaxaca State in Mexico. They speak their own languages and keep their traditions alive. Creating the 3D model of the lost city is just the beginning of the research. Archaeologists hope that future studies of Gayangula will help us learn more about how the Zapotecs were organized, how they ruled their cities, and how they interacted with the Spanish when they arrived. They plan to study all 1,100 buildings found in the LiDAR scan, and it will take a few years. Instead of digging up the ruins, they will use special technology to scan the land and learn more about the city without damaging it. This same tech helped scientists find another massive ancient city that lay hidden beneath the thick green canopy of the Amazon forest. A whole network of houses, plazas, roads, and canals was hiding in the shadow of a mighty volcano. For centuries, many scientists assumed that ancient Amazonian people lived in tiny huts, clearing patches of land to survive. But this city, built 2,500 years ago and inhabited for 1,000 years, proves the opposite. Now, scientists think tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people lived in complex urban societies. Scanning the area found 6,000 rectangular platforms, each measuring around 66 by 33 feet, and standing 6 to 9 feet high. These structures were arranged in clusters around central plazas, with straight roads with perfect right angles and paths connecting them. One of the roads was 16 miles long. Building straight roads like this is far harder than just following the landscape. Some of these roads may have had deep spiritual or ceremonial significance. The volcano's rich soil helped the civilization thrive, but it may also have led to its downfall. Researchers also found signs of threats to the cities, such as ditches that blocked entrances to the settlements. Maybe some people living nearby were trying to get in. The next step for the researchers will be studying the adjoining 116 square miles to know more about this large, complex society that could be bigger than the well-known Mayan societies in Mexico and Central America. Meanwhile, in 1963, a man in Turkey discovered an ancient city while renovating his own house. He knocked down a wall in his basement and found a mysterious room. He kept digging and saw a tunnel. It led to the Derinkuyu underground city. It's one of the deepest multi-level underground settlements in Cappadocia and in all of Turkey. The inhabitants lived on 8 levels and had access to cellars, storage areas, chapels, a school, a study room, and other structures. All floors were connected by an extensive network of tunnels. The underground city was probably built as a shelter. The construction is hiding at 279 feet deep, and you can't see it from the outside. The complex was large enough to shelter about 20,000 people with their livestock and food supplies. There was also a 180-foot ventilation shaft. Archaeologists believe that Phrygians first built the levels. The Romans used and enhanced the structure later. The golden time of Derinkuyu was during the Byzantine era. The next lost and found city appeared only in a few inscriptions and ancient texts, so no one could be sure it really existed. Scientists searched the majority of the coast of Egypt until one archaeologist and his team detected a colossal face looking at them from under the water. The ancient city of Thonis Heraklion was discovered completely submerged 4 miles off Alexandria's coast. In the ruins of the lost city, there were 64 ships, 700 anchors, and a treasure trove of gold coins. Archaeologists believe the 16-foot-tall statue and the temple remains are the most important findings discovered by the expedition. Back then, the city had ceremonies and celebrations that took place in the Temple of Ammon. The ruins and artifacts were made from granite and diorite, so they were in good condition even after having been in contact with water for centuries. They give people a glimpse into what life was like 2,300 years ago in one of the most important trade ports of the world. The city had a network of canals, sort of like an ancient Egyptian Venice. The canals linked many separate harbors and anchorages. Towers, temples, houses, and other structures were also linked by bridges. Thonis Heraklion was the country's main port for international trade and the collection of taxes. No one really knows how the city ended up submerged, but archaeologists connect it with natural causes. At the end of the 2nd century BCE, most probably after a flood, it got covered with water. Then Alexandria, the city founded by Alexander the Great, became more glorious than Heraklion. Before Alexandria's fame, Heraklion was the main port of entry to Egypt. So after the tragedy, many ships heading for Heraklion had to change their route and go to Alexandria. Heraklion lost its glory until its discovery in 2000. A perfectly carved vertical hole hidden deep in the North Caucasus Mountains drops into the Earth like someone drilled straight toward the planet's core. Some people even compare the shaft to internal passages inside the Egyptian pyramids. Could there really be a connection between them? So the public learned about this mystery cave thanks to a local cave enthusiast who was hiking in the North Caucasus in 2011. The rugged slopes of the Kara Hora mountain, with glacier-carved valleys and cliffs that have stood there against all sorts of weather for thousands of years, seem to be a perfect place if you want to hide something. And that's where Shemakov found something that looked like an entrance to an underground cave. He invited a team of cavers, and together they went down the shaft. At first, they were sure it was a geological formation, but the deeper they descended, the more it looked like something carefully built by humans. There were massive stone blocks that seemed fitted together so tightly that you couldn't push a knife blade between them. Some sources also say the shaft drops almost perfectly vertical, and its walls look polished, as if giant machinery smoothed them long before modern tools existed. But in reality, this smooth appearance results from natural geological fractures. What's really weird are openings resembling ventilation channels. These passages seem designed to move air through the structure. Natural caves rarely organize airflow this cleanly. That detail alone makes researchers argue whether someone designed and built all this intentionally, And if someone did build it on purpose, it would have to be one really advanced civilization. Some people said Zhemakov described his discovery in every detail in his diary. But even if it really existed, it was lost. So we'll never know what was in it. In fact, we know so little about this man, and his discovery wasn't mentioned a lot on TV or elsewhere, that some people even questioned if he existed at all. Or maybe he saw something down there he shouldn't have seen. And there's no way to double-check, as he was hit by a car and passed away just 4 years after the discovery. This tragedy fueled even more rumors, speculation, and conspiracy theories. Geologists are trying to find a more logical explanation for this shaft, of course. The Caucasus Mountains are part of a massive chain called the Alpida Belt, which stretches all the way from southeastern Europe right into Asia. The Caucasus formed as a result of a tectonic plate collision. All these massive plates are still restless and constantly pushing against each other today. So the entire region gets hit with strong earthquakes on a regular basis. Plus, water, pressure, and chemical reactions can carve vertical shafts over millions of years. Underground rivers dissolve softer rock, and harder layers remain smooth, eventually forming deep chimneys. But erosion usually creates randomness, and Kara Hora has symmetry, angles, and fitted stone features that resemble architecture more than accident. Now, getting inside the shaft is still extremely dangerous. You'd have to face sheer drops, unstable ledges, and oxygen levels that thin out deeper underground. Twisting tunnels make it super tricky to find your way, and locals warn that some of the first explorers who entered never returned. Luckily, modern teams can use ground-penetrating radar and remote sensors instead of human descent to study the shaft. With every new scan, researchers find more voids that are still unreachable. Meanwhile, Kara Hora has interesting neighbors. For example, Verovkina Cave, currently the second deepest known cave on the planet. This monster drops nearly 1.5 miles straight down, deeper than 4 Empire State Buildings stacked end to end. Explorers descend through freezing waterfalls, razor-sharp rock corridors, and vertical pits that swallow light completely. Temperatures here hover just above freezing, and underground rivers roar through darkness nobody saw until recently. If you dare reach the bottom, prepare for a journey that will last weeks of staged camps, ropes stretching thousands of feet, and absolute trust in teammates. One mistake down there means you'll be gone for good. Veryovkina constantly floods and reshapes itself year after year, so cavers have to deal with flood pulses all the time. Water cuts deeper into the limestone rock and expands chambers slowly but surely, and then, because of the volume, suddenly bursts through cave openings. But this doesn't stop scientists from going down there to measure oxygen, airflow, and mineral growth to understand how caves evolve over geologic time. And that's how explorers discover strange microbial life that somehow survives without sunlight and feeds on minerals instead of plants. These ecosystems resemble conditions scientists expect beneath icy moons like Europa or Enceladus. This means the cave could be a great training ground for future space exploration. But before we head to space, let's check out another super interesting cave system, this time in northern Spain. There's a chamber there which scientists call Pit of Bones. Explorers have to trek into a pitch-black underground maze to squeeze through a narrow shaft that suddenly drops straight down for 42 feet. At the bottom of that geological trap, you slide down a steep stone ramp into a cramped, muddy chamber that holds the largest and oldest collection of early human fossils ever discovered. It's a biological time capsule with the remains of at least 28 ancient humans, frozen long before modern history even began. Explorers also found over 6,500 fossil fragments mixed with the remains of at least 166 Ice Age cave bears, lions, wolves, and foxes that probably fell down the shaft by accident. But the human bones are a massive mystery because they seem to have ended up down there much earlier than the animals. Who these people actually were is still a huge debate. When researchers looked closer at their skulls and jaws, they noticed strong, super early Neanderthal traits. Then things got even crazier when scientists miraculously extracted mitochondrial DNA from those ancient bones. It linked these individuals not only to early Neanderthals, but also to the Denisovans, a mysterious group of ancient humans found thousands of miles away in Siberia. It proves our ancestors were moving and mixing in ways far more complicated than anyone ever guessed. The drama doesn't stop at genetics, though. This dark cave might actually hold the world's first assassination mystery and its earliest funeral. Out of thousands of bones, archaeologists found absolutely no everyday tools or food waste, except for a single, carefully crafted quartzite hand axe they nicknamed Excalibur. Because of this, some researchers think the group intentionally lowered their deceased down the shaft with the axe as a ritual. It was probably a way to show compassion hundreds of thousands of years before we thought possible. At the same time, one of the skulls shows two identical lethal fractures that look exactly like intentional blows. To get the exact timeline for all this prehistoric drama, scientists use cutting-edge tech like electron spin resonance and uranium series dating, and finally locked down that is 430,000 years old. Now, let's jump across the world to another geological giant, Devil's Tower in Wyoming. The formation shoots nearly 900 feet above the surrounding land. Its surface has long vertical columns, and it looks like some careful hands carved them. But geologists explain the structure formed when molten rock pushed upwards underground and cooled slowly. As the rock cooled, it turned into hexagonal columns, similar to how drying mud splits into patterns, just scaled up to impossible size. Erosion later removed the softer surrounding rock and left the hardened core unprotected. Local tribes thought the tower was sacred and made up stories about giant bears clawing the stone during mythical hunts. Now, scientists agree on much of its volcanic origin, but debates continue about whether magma ever reached the surface or hardened entirely underground. Even after more than a century of study, Devil's Tower still has its mysteries. When you connect all these places, engineered shafts, endless caves, and underground ecosystem, one thing becomes clear. Earth hides entire worlds beneath our feet, and we've barely scratched the surface.
Deep inside the heart of the Amazon rainforest lies a cave so massive, it defies logic. Stretching for 2,000 feet, this tunnel is so big a human could easily walk around inside of it. Its walls are etched with deep, mysterious claw marks. But this is just one of many. If you travel to the south of Brazil, you'll stumble upon over 1,500 similar caves, ranging from modest tiny burrows to massive passageways. These are not your average spooky, bat-filled caverns. They're what researchers call paleo burrows, also known as ancient underground structures dug by creatures so colossal they make modern elephants look small. Whatever creature dug those tunnels displaced 800 elephants worth of dirt. I know, it still looks like a normal cave, but experts noticed this one was special because the walls were too neat and rounded, and the floor was too smooth. Besides, no water or erosion leaves such signs of serious digging power. These Brazilian caves are the largest geological records of animal activity on the planet. It's like stumbling into a prehistoric house made by creatures the size of cars. To unlock this mystery, researchers analyzed the scratch marks on the walls and realized they had probably been made by giant ground sloths, a species called valgipes, which could weigh nearly 9,000 pounds and eat your average annual menu in about 3 days. Despite being huge, these animals were not earthbenders. They had to work in groups if they wanted to dig such long tunnels. This is why scientists believe many sloths shared the same tunnel and dug it together. Even some giant armadillos may have helped with the digging. After all, they were ridiculously skilled excavators and lived there too. Okay, but why would a giant sloth or armadillo need a 2,000-foot-long underground lair? Great question. And the truth is, scientists aren't totally sure. It doesn't make sense for them to dig tunnels this massive just to escape predators. especially since the tunnels were big enough for a saber-toothed tiger to crawl in, for example. So, unless they installed prehistoric security systems, this theory has holes. Haha, pun intended. The best bet is probably climate. Back then, everything was drier and colder, and some species of giant sloths were living their best lives back when Earth was transitioning between cold and warmer periods. Their big bodies usually protected these animals from temperature changes, but drastic fluctuations probably made them hide in order to survive. Besides, just like modern sloths, giant sloths probably had a hard time maintaining their body temperature, and going underground for a while is a great way to protect your babies and save some energy. After all, the bigger you are, the more energy you spend. Some scientists believe these tunnels might have had rotating tenants. One sloth moves in, digs a bit, leaves some scratch marks, moves out. And sometime later, another one crashes there and adds its own decor touches. A hostel for ancient megafauna. All evidence points to a more timeshare situation than a prehistoric private property. After all, these creatures weren't exactly social butterflies. Most sloths and armadillos usually keep things strictly one-on-one, just mom and baby. Yeah, dad sloth stuck around only for the good part. But you probably noticed one tiny detail here. These guys are not around anymore. They went extinct 11,000 years ago, right around the time humans started to get popular on Earth, when another ice age was ending. In fact, 80% of all mammals that were heavier than 2 pounds disappeared then. The first culprit is, of course, the usual suspect: humans. Around 10,000 years ago, a wave of skilled hunters using distinctive tools like spear points spread across North America. The theory goes that American animals weren't used to this new predator, making them easy targets. Once the big plant eaters started vanishing, the big meat eaters followed. They didn't have enough food to survive, and it wasn't just excessive hunting that caused some damage. Early humans may have also harmed ecosystems in ways that made survival harder for large species. But wait, there's another suspect: climate change. Around the same time, Earth's climate got a major shakeup. The climate was going from super cold to only slightly cold. Just so you know, Earth's temperature was about 46 degrees Fahrenheit, making seasons change and plants perish. And if plants are no longer around, big animals that eat them, like our friends giant sloths, have less nutrition, making them even more vulnerable. Many scientists now think that both human impact and climate change played a role, just in different ways depending on the region. In some places, humans may have tipped the balance. In others, nature itself did the job. Either way, it was a perfect storm that ended the age of giants. Turns out, being huge isn't always a plus. Giant animals tend to live longer and reproduce slowly, which makes them sitting ducks when disaster strikes. Besides, it takes a long time for these guys to bounce back. After dinos disappeared, for example, it took 15 million years for new mega mammals to stomp onto the scene. The last major extinction happened around 12,000 years ago. Not really enough time for brand new massive beasts to evolve. Today's biggest ground animals, like elephants, rhinos, and bison, aren't newcomers. They're actually the tough survivors of that ancient chaos. And, well, at least we still live alongside the blue whale, the biggest mammal ever. But why did some prehistoric animals get so gigantic in the first place? Well, being big has some perks, in spite of all the extinction thing. It keeps you safe from predators and helps you win the fight for food. If plant eaters bulked up, predators had to level up too, just to keep up. And the environment plays a big role. You see, cold-blooded animals might grow bigger in hot places to stay cool, and warm-blooded giants thrive in cold places to stay warm. One paleontologist even suggested that some dino-sized vegetarians needed those massive bellies just to digest the tough, woody plants of their time, as if they had a salad bar inside their bodies. There's also the thing with oxygen. Back then, Earth's atmosphere had way more of it. That's a big deal, especially for creatures with less efficient breathing systems like insects. Higher oxygen levels meant their bodies could handle more growth and more activity, kind of like nature's turbo mode. We also have to discuss bones, specifically the lighter ones. Many huge dinosaurs had air sacs built into their skeletons, just like modern birds. This made their bones strong but not ridiculously heavy, meaning they could grow super tall or long without collapsing under their own weight. Those air sacs also helped with cooling down, which is super important when you're basically a walking oven of muscle. On the flip side, modern mammals are limited by gravity and biology. Bigger bodies need stronger hearts, lungs, and blood pressure just to keep functioning, and land doesn't offer much support. This also explains why whales got even bigger than dinosaurs. The ocean acts like a natural support system, which pretty much means that buoyancy helps hold up all that mass. So blue whales can hit a jaw-dropping 330,000 pounds without turning into pancakes. On land, that kind of size would be a serious health hazard. So ancient giants weren't just freaks of nature. They were the result of the right mix of air, food, physics, and environment working together in just the right way. The whole extinction event surely is a bummer for giant sloths that worked as gigantic engineers of nature, but it surely prevented us from sharing the planet with insects the size of crows, like some types of griffinflies or millipedes reaching almost 6 feet in length. Yikes! Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to appreciate modern sloths. Slow, small, and thankfully incapable of terraforming the landscape and giving me insect-related panic attacks. They were digging a well when they hit something that made them stop mid-swing. Their shovels struck stone, and as they cleared the dirt away, the farmers saw blocks, lined up like bricks in a fortress wall. It happened in Texas in 1852. But to this day, there's no single explanation for something that looks like a secret buried city beneath quiet streets and front lawns. The diggers who found the well said that the structure stretched for miles. In some places, it dropped dozens of feet below the surface. The stones looked strangely orderly, almost like someone had stacked them, and in certain places, the shapes even formed arches. Other sections looked like windows or steps climbing upward. Before long, people started calling it the Great Wall of Texas. And the story spread quickly. Farmers, builders, and curious locals all grabbed shovels and started digging around, hoping to figure out what it really was. And that's when they noticed that the blocks seemed separated by seams that looked suspiciously like mortar. It was really hard to believe that nature could stack limestone into right angles and parallel lines like this. Then, things got even stranger. In 1886, a local newspaper wrote about a massive petrified skull found near the wall. They also mentioned underground chambers, lost rooms beneath Texas soil, and relics of something powerful and old. And then, almost as quickly as it appeared, the story vanished from print. There were no follow-up articles, no skull preserved in a museum, no official investigation that anyone could point to. It was as if the story had quietly slipped out of existence. People got even more intrigued and wanted to know if someone had suppressed all the info about the find on purpose. Someone suggested that some powerful institutions had quietly removed artifacts. Over time, theories piled up. Lost civilizations, ancient giants, even a North American counterpart to the Great Pyramid. But then, modern science stepped in with drilling rigs. Geologists drilled deep into the formation and pulled out samples of the rock. Then, they ran paleomagnetic tests. When rocks form, tiny magnetic minerals inside them line up with Earth's magnetic field at that moment, almost like microscopic compass needles frozen in place. If workers had cut these blocks somewhere else, maybe dug them out of a quarry, and then transported and assembled them into a wall, the magnetic patterns inside the rocks would have pointed in different directions. Each block would carry the signature of the place where it originally formed, but every sample had the same magnetic orientation, which means the stone formed exactly where it sits today. Researchers figured out the wall was made of rare limestone. This material can fracture in surprisingly straight lines as it hardens underground. Over long periods, erosion opens up those fractures, and they can look exactly like human-made walls. It's like mud. When it dries, it splits into neat geometric patterns. Now imagine the same process happening underground, slowly over millions of years on a much larger scale. Today, the scientists are sure that the rock wall formation developed naturally. It only seems constructed by humans. Recently, a family whose ancestors were early rock wall settlers donated a piece of land to the city that has the original site where the wall was excavated. And because the interest in the place lives on, the city authorities plan to make the original wall accessible to the public. The rock wall isn't alone. In 1968, 3 divers spotted large rectangular limestone blocks near North Bimini in the Bahamas. The blocks were in a straight line stretching about a half a mile. Divers called it the Bimini Road. It consists of massive angular blocks of limestone. Some of those blocks are up to 13 feet long. Many of the blocks look like they once had right-angled corners, as if someone cut them and placed them there with purpose. The 3 divers found this construction when the world buzzed with interest in Atlantis. So headlines immediately connected the dots and were seriously asking whether this could be the first physical trace of Plato's legendary civilization. We still don't have any archaeological evidence to confirm it actually existed, but the timing and the shape of the Bimini stones made many people believe that was it. But then, geologists explained that beach rock forms when sand, shell fragments, and other coastal sediments cement together in warm, shallow water. The Bimini blocks consist of small mud pellets, grains of sand, shell pieces, remains of tiny single-celled marine organisms, and fragments of algae. Over time, chemical reactions bound these materials into solid limestone sheets. Natural fractures split the sheets into rectangular blocks. As sea levels rose at the end of the last ice age, water gradually submerged the formation. Waves and currents eroded the sand beneath parts of it and made some blocks look slightly elevated or recessed. Then, researchers did radiocarbon dating on rock samples, shells embedded with them, and the carbonate cement holding everything together. That's how they found out that the stones were roughly 2,000 years old. It's way after Atlantis' supposed demise 12,000 years ago. So no, the Bimini Road doesn't lead to Atlantis. But it helped scientists better understand how coastlines evolve, how sediment hardens, and how rising seas reshape continents. There's another mysterious structure that might have to do with Atlantis. Meet the Eye of the Sahara, or more officially, the Richat structure in Mauritania. From space, it looks like a 25-mile-wide bullseye carved into the desert. Concentric rings ripple outward like someone dropped a cosmic pebble. People who saw it first thought it was a spot left by a meteor impact. And a new theory links it to Atlantis. They say it looks exactly how Plato described it, with a center island with 3 rings of water and 3 rings of land around it. The Eye of the Sahara sits totally dry right now, but imagine if you dropped it down to sea level. Ocean water would rush in and fill those dips, and boom, you get something that looks a whole lot like Plato's famous city. On top of that, the size seems pretty close. Plato said the main part of Atlantis measured about 11 miles across, and the Richat structure measures roughly 13 miles wide. But wait, Atlantis famously sank into the ocean, so for this to work, the eye had to sit right at sea level a long time ago. The fans of this idea claim that this whole chunk of northwest Africa slowly pushed upward over the last 11,000 years. They say it sat right at the ocean's edge way back around 9,600 BCE, which is exactly when Plato's story takes place. To back this up, they point out tons of salt inside the rings in satellite pictures, saying this proves ocean water used to sit right there. They also see sand all around the eye that looks like a giant wave washed over it. A huge wave like that would totally wipe out any city sitting there, just like the wave that supposedly sank Atlantis. It all sounds pretty convincing, but actual scientists and historians totally disagree. Because when you look closely, the facts just fall apart. Yes, the eye has 3 clear ridges, but if you measure all 3, the whole thing stretches way bigger than 13 miles. On the flip side, if you only measure out to 13 miles, you have to leave out the 3rd ridge entirely. So it doesn't actually match Plato's description perfectly, since you simply can't have it both ways. Modern satellite images show that the eye formed from uplifted rock layers that were pushed upward by molten material beneath the surface. Wind and water erosion then peeled back those layers like an onion over at least 100 million years. The oldest rocks sit in the center. Younger layers ring outward. It's a geological dome, not a crater, not a city. Inside the structure, scientists found igneous rocks, hardened magma, and sedimentary layers twisted by immense pressure. Hot water chemically changed the rocks and left additional signatures. Ancient stone tools also scatter across the region, showing that early humans once passed through. This site is now among the most significant geological heritage locations on Earth.
There's this interesting ancient site near St. Louis, Missouri, that a lot of people don't know about. It's called Cahokia, and it used to be a huge city with up to 20,000 people living there back in the 11th century. It's full of these massive earthen mounds that were built by hand, and the biggest one is still there today, at the Cahokia Mound State Historic Site. Even though we don't know everything about this civilization, researchers have been able to piece together some information from the remains they've found. For starters, they found some pretty old teeth at this site. After studying their appearance and structure, scientists suggest that a lot of different indigenous groups lived there. About a third of them came from other areas in the middle of the continent, which they figured out by studying the different levels of various substances in the teeth. And get this, the way the mounds are arranged shows that this was actually a planned-out city, not just a bunch of villages grouped together. The rulers lived on top of the mounds, while everyone else lived in other structures. It's amazing to think that they were doing things like farming, hunting, logging, pottery, and weaving, all within this one giant city. Right in the middle of Cahokia, there was this giant mound that was about 100 feet tall, and around it, there was this huge wooden fence. Inside the fence was the city center, which had a big open space called a plaza. Archaeologists think that the plaza was designed to represent the 4 cardinal directions of the world. It was like the people who built it wanted to create a place that was in harmony with the universe. The center of the city was where they held ceremonies and events, and it was such a big deal that people from outside Cahokia would come to be a part of them too. What became of this city? Hard to tell. Some people think that the reason it fell apart is that they cut down too many trees and the land got all messed up. Other scientists believe that's not true because the soil was still in pretty good shape after the city was gone. The Europeans were not even around at that time, so they couldn't have influenced the downfall of Cahokia either. There's also one theory that suggests there were fights with other communities that caused the city to collapse. These days, there are over 65 preserved mounds, and you can even climb the steps of the tallest one. The best part is that local authorities are thinking of making it a national park, so you should totally plan to visit before it gets too crowded. Mohenjo-Daro is another lost ancient city that's still surrounded by mystery. Located in modern-day Pakistan, it was a city that flourished during the Bronze Age, and it was extremely advanced for its time. It had things like water systems and fancy architecture that other cities didn't have back then. Despite these features, it's not as well known as other ancient cities, like those in Egypt or Mesopotamia. What's even weirder is that at some point, the city was abandoned, and no one knows why. Archaeologists found the city in 1911, but it took a while for them to realize how important it was. Eventually, they uncovered a lot of really interesting things about the city, like its advanced sanitation system. Excavations uncovered over 700 wells, as well as private baths and a large communal bath. Remarkably, even private homes had toilets, and waste was efficiently disposed of through a citywide sewage system. They also had a lot of trade connections and made some really beautiful objects, like pottery, jewelry, and figurines that were sold all over the region. Despite its amazing culture and knowledge, scientists have yet to figure out why the city was abandoned. Some people think changes in the nearby river might have had something to do with it. The writings that the people of Mohenjo-Daro left behind are still a complex code, even for the most skilled specialists, making it even harder to piece together their history. Have you heard of the lost city of Kolmanskop? It used to be a small settlement in the Namib Desert. Legend has it that it got its name from a man named Coleman who got stuck in the local dunes and was never seen again. But that's not the interesting part. In 1908, a railway worker found a shiny stone and showed it to the chief railway foreman, who turned out to be a hobby mineralogist. They discovered it was a diamond, and soon, Kolmanskop became the richest town in Africa and one of the richest places in the world. It had luxurious stone houses, a school, a hospital, and even an ice factory to produce ice for fridges. The hospital had the first X-ray machine in southern Africa, which was supposedly used to check if workers were illegally swallowing diamonds. Its popularity began to decline in the late 1920s when another diamond-rich location was discovered nearby. Most of the inhabitants soon began to flee the city in search of a better life, leaving the buildings abandoned. In 1938, all machinery was taken south and the town was left to the desert. The last inhabitant left Kolmanskop between 1956 and 1960. The hot climate and low humidity have preserved the structures over time, and tourists can now visit this desert ghost town. You've surely heard about this next ancient city, Machu Picchu. It's this incredible ancient location in Peru. It stretches across a huge piece of land in the Andes Mountains and sits high above sea level. It's even considered one of the wonders of the modern world. But here's the thing. Scientists aren't exactly sure what it was used for. It could have supported up to 750 people, but there aren't a lot of human clues left behind. Some people think it was more of a spiritual or ceremonial place, while others believe it may have been like a fancy spa retreat for the nobles. The extensive terraces might mean it was used for crop testing or as a trading hub. And there's even a theory that it was used as a prison because they found a cell-like area too. It's amazing that even today, archaeologists and historians are still puzzled about how it was built. Did you know that they probably didn't even use wheels for transportation? And those massive granite rocks were somehow pushed up the steep Andean mountains, even though most of them weighed a lot. Some historians think that hundreds of people worked together to push each rock up the peak. The huge stones at Machu Picchu are also so close together that you can't see any cracks between them. It's pretty cool because it also makes the area safe during earthquakes, which is important since Peru is a shaky country. But how did the stones stay put during all those quakes? They actually move a little bit, but then they go back to their original spot, almost like they're dancing. Some people think wet wooden wedges were used to keep them in place, but that doesn't really add up, considering how big the structures are. Locals back then also seem to have built Machu Picchu without using any pack animals or iron tools. They had to sculpt and put everything together using mostly their hands. Plus, the citadel is built on a fault, so they had to move a bunch of stone and earth to make it flat. Scientists also think that the real construction is actually underground because of the deep foundations and drainage system. In fact, there's a hidden water system that was just recently discovered using 3D scanning. They didn't even use mortar to put the granite blocks together. They were so precise that you can't even fit a sheet of paper between them. One theory suggests that people that lived there used stone tools made of a harder material than the stone they were cutting.
They finally did it. After 300 years of searching, archaeologists pinned down the location of the lost land of the white jaguar, the city of Maya hidden in the wild jungles of Mexico. It all kicked off back in the 1500s with the Lacandon Maya. These guys were some super tough survivors who just didn't quit. When their main capital, Lacamtun, fell to the Spanish in 1586, most people would have called it game over. But not the Lacandon. Nope, they packed up, headed deeper into the rainforest, and built their last stronghold, Sacbalan. It was a hidden fortress of stone temples, twisty jungle trails, and howler monkeys acting like noisy little guards. For over 100 years, the Lacandon managed to keep their traditions alive there, far from European control. Then, in 1695, history came crashing in. A Spanish friar named Diego de Ribas stumbled into Sacbalan. And yeah, that was basically the beginning of the end. Soon after, the Spanish took over. By 1721, the Maya had abandoned Sacbalan. The jungle didn't waste time. It swallowed the place whole, with roots tearing into walls and vines smothering plazas. The city didn't just disappear, it got eaten alive. For the next 300 years, Sacbalan turned into more of a myth than a memory. A name archaeologists and explorers would whisper, secretly hoping to find it one day. Plenty of expeditions tried to track it down, but the rainforest is sneaky. Every path looks identical, maps fall apart in the humidity, and even GPS can't cut through the thick green ceiling. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, except the haystack was alive, covered in thorns, and yeah, crawling with jaguars that would happily make you lunch. So how did the scientists crack the mystery? One word: a letter from the 17th century. The letter by Diego de Ribas described all the routes, rivers, and trails leading to Sacbalan. It showed in every detail the journey of the soldiers who walked 4 days to the Lacandon River after leaving Sacbalan. Then they sailed for 2 days and arrived at the church El Encuentro de Cristo, left their canoes, and continued on foot to Lake Petén Itzá in Guatemala. This was already detailed enough, but the scientists needed to pinpoint the exact location with geographic information systems. They took into account vegetation layers and how much each person was carrying to map an approximate range where Sacbalan should be. They fed this information to GIS and calculated where the city should be. And bingo, it worked. Archaeologists traveled through the jungle and found stone temples rising like broken teeth from the earth. There were also some tools and ceramics, and a Spanish church right in the middle of the ruins. The discovery isn't just about cool ruins, it rewrites history. For decades, people assumed the Lacandon simply scattered after Lacamtun fell, but Sacbalan proves they regrouped, fought, and preserved their culture for over a century more. It's like discovering the final chapter of a book we thought ended too soon. There's also irony here. The Spanish friar who revealed Sacbalan helped doom it. Yet his letter, centuries later, also helped save its memory. Today, the ruins sit inside a biosphere reserve, protected by the same jungle that once hid them. Tourists can't just waltz in. It's raw, tangled, alive. The city breathes again, but on its own terms. Scientists just uncovered another lost city, buried under the thick jungles of Mexico. It had been hiding there for 600 years. The place is called Gengola, and it's massive, about 360 hectares with more than 1,100 buildings, 2.5 miles of defensive walls, its own network of roads, and a super organized city plan. Because it was so deep in the jungle, you'd never realize how huge it really was unless you spent years hiking through it. But modern tech swooped in to save the day, using LiDAR, a kind of laser scanning tool. Researchers flew over the site, and in just 2 hours, they had a full 3D map of the entire city. Gengola was built sometime between 1350 and 1521, back in pre-Columbian times, and it used to be buzzing with life. It was a major hub for the Zapotec people, who had been around in the region since about 600 BCE. Families there lived in homes with big central patios surrounded by rooms, and as they got new members, they just add more rooms and stretch their houses out. They even used the mountains around them as natural walls and channeled mountain water for drainage. A lot of their buildings are still standing, which is wild considering how much time has passed. By the late 1400s, the Zapotec were real powerhouses along the Pacific coast. They even fought off the Aztecs, who were constantly trying to expand. At Gengola, they survived a brutal 7-month siege. But even though hiding in the mountains kept them safe, it wasn't perfect. They didn't have enough fresh water or farmland to feed everyone. Just 12 miles away, the smaller city of Tehuantepec had what they needed. So the Zapotec moved there right before the Spanish arrived in 1521. What the scientists have seen so far is just scratching the surface. That LiDAR scan revealed more than 1,000 buildings, and archaeologists are planning years of research to figure it all out. Instead of digging everything up and risking damage, they'll use advanced scanning tech to keep studying the city safely. Alright, now let's hop across the world to Egypt, where archaeologists stumbled on a whole lost city called Imet, tucked away in the eastern Nile Delta. The place was buried under layers of mud, water, and time, hiding in a swamp that's been shifting and changing for thousands of years. Scientists first noticed it from way up high in faint little clusters of mud brick foundations in satellite images. The shapes looked shaky and ghost-like, but too neat to be natural. So they followed the patterns down on the ground, started digging, and the city started coming back to life. They found multi-story tower houses, basically mini skyscrapers of the ancient world. They had multiple floors, thick foundations, and could handle some serious weight. That kind of vertical living is super rare in Egypt, especially outside the Nile Delta. It showed that people in Imet weren't just spreading across the land, but stacking upward, which means the city was packed, carefully planned, and way more urban than anyone thought for that time. And it wasn't just fancy housing either. Archaeologists also uncovered a grain processing center with paved work areas, animal pens, and organized spaces for food production. Clearly, this was a city with a real economy running behind it. Not far from there, they spotted a ceremonial road that once led to a temple for Wadjet, Imet's patron deity. But later on, other buildings got plunked down over the road, which shows that Wadjet's worship faded over time. Still, the ruins coughed up some amazing relics, a green faience little funerary figurine, and a stela showing Harpocrates perched on crocodiles and gripping snakes. He was the Greek spin on Horus, deity of silence, secrets, and the newborn sun. And there was even a bronze sistrum, an ancient Egyptian musical instrument decorated with twin heads of Hathor. Turns out, Imet was active from around the 4th century BCE onward, stretching from Egypt's late period into the Roman era. Its location along trade routes made it a magnet for merchants and pilgrims visiting Wadjet's temple. So it wasn't just hanging on, it was thriving, connecting, trading, and adapting with the times. And this isn't just another dusty ruin. Imet is giving us a window into everyday life, religion, and urban planning in the Delta, which we've always known way less about compared to the big pyramids and tombs.